Okay, here we go. Meet your sidekick. So, don't mind if I stand. First and foremost, my name is Stephan Peralta. I am the organizer, the host here at Nstruct. Nstruct is an events company, and our primary goal is reducing the barrier of entry for merchants. It's an extremely exciting time to be on Shopify and growing on Shopify. We believe a simple conversation goes a long way. So, before we get into our incredible hey, there we go. I have to thank some of our sponsors that help us, of course, make this a reality. So first and foremost, when you think of the world's largest independent Shopify agency, there's only one name that really comes up, and that's Domaine. Of course, we got Mac, the CTO, and I'm sure he'll explain a lot more Domaine, but hey, there you go. Let's hear a round of applause. Hey, shout out Domain.
Great intro. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is, let's talk a little bit about personalization. We're going to be talking a lot about AI in the near future, but personalization. And what comes to personalization more than Rebuy? If you aren't familiar with Rebuy, they're not just a Shopify app. They're a full suite of feature sets that really allow you to take your Shopify store to the next level. So if you haven't had a chance to look into Rebuy, Bianca's right there. I'm calling you out. She'll be happy to chat with you. Next is Archer & Co. When we first started this event, we needed someone to be by our side, someone established, someone understand processes, and someone that can just, take you through some of the hardest times trying to put anything together. And Archer & Co has been there. They're a generalized full service agency from branding, strategy, conceptualization, execution. I'm sure Sarah might be able to speak a little bit more about that as well. Very multi-talented. I'm sure we'll get to that. But continuing from there, Tall Boy. Now, there's a lot of tall men here. I'm 6 foot, so I like to think I'm like a threshold of somewhat being tall. But sometimes I don't feel tall, and sometimes I feel dehydrated, and that's when I grab a Tall Boy. So if you're looking for a quenching carbonated water, there's Tall Boy all over here. Phil, who's going to be helping with our videography, is a part of the Tall Boy team as well. And if you like to talk about water, he's your man. So last but not least is a store hero. Analytics is something that we can sometimes dread. Having a tool like Store Hero to aggregate all of your data in an easy, digestible way is critical for growth. So with that being said, those are our amazing sponsors. So again, thank you guys so much. But I want to talk a little bit about myself less and start talking a little bit more about our panel. But one last thing before I do. Can you guys please put your hand up if you are familiar with Shopify Sidekick? Okay, we either have shy people or people that are going to be learning a lot in the very near future. But for those who aren't familiar with Shopify Sidekick, I always like to say this. Entrepreneurship, is a very lonely journey. And when it comes to, starting your very first store, uploading your very first product, getting your very first customer, getting to your first $1 million, it's going to be a heck of a journey. And Shopify Sidekick will always be there with you. Next time you're on your Shopify dashboard, just look at the top right corner. You'll see a funny little icon which looks like a sidekick. Do me a favor, click that icon, play around with it. We'll go into more details, but I promise you in the next week or so, you're going to be that much more efficient in growing your business. So with that being said, let's talk about Sidekick, eh? Before we do, I think I would love to allow our amazing panelists to introduce themselves, give them a bit of a background about yourselves, and we'll kick things off.
My turn. Cool. I'm Max, everybody. Hello, thank you for coming. I'm the CTO of Domaine, which you gave a very nice introduction for me. We're about a 260-person full-service Shopify agency. We exclusively focus on Shopify, and we're engineering first as well. So we're 50% engineering, just to give you a base. You asked about Sidekick, but is anybody already in the Shopify ecosystem? Oh, we've got one. Yes. Okay, so maybe like 50-50 of familiarity with Shopify versus kind of introducing yourself to the ecosystem. Cool.
Hi. My name is Sarah Carter. Nice to meet you all. I'm actually here for 2 reasons. So number one, I'm the director of brand and creative at Archer & Co., full service marketing agency. We are based in Toronto, Canada, but we have clients all over. including in the US. And I have a business that is called Carter Wiley. It's a jewelry business and it's on Shopify. So I have a Shopify shop, and like a lot of entrepreneurs, I wear a million hats, which is including forced hats like web developer, because it's cheaper to do it yourself when you're starting up. So that's why I'm here.
Hey everyone, my name is Humayun Rashid. I'm the design director and CEO of Nessa Lab. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming, so appreciate that. Nessa is a product design studio here in New York. We work primarily with venture-backed startups on the design side, so lots of strategy work, lots of design work, really helping them just look awesome for their clients and investors. Also a long-time Shopify partner of running on 10, 12 years now, so very familiar with this ecosystem. Excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, first and foremost, when it comes to Sidekick, there's so much that can be done, and we're going to be unraveling all of these different layers. But now that you realize that you have an AI specialist that knows everything about your Shopify store, I'd love to ask our panelists, what would you say is your favorite thing about Sidekick in terms of maybe a merchant implementation, a personal perspective? Like, what have you found that's made it pretty darn exciting?
Me first. Okay, so there's an element of operating a business that is going through a pretty big evolution. And I think a lot of the way that we run our day-to-day operations is around using agentic models, conversational-based dynamics to be able to make easy tasks quicker, like do things in minutes and not hours. Recently, like as of like 2 months ago, Shopify Sidekick, which is an embedded AI solution within Shopify, went through like a major overhaul. They completely redid the way that it can interact with forms, and an admin experience is kind of just forms anyway, many forms, as well as the way that it can interact with an analytics engine. And I'm going to call out the analytics engine because being able to navigate and even understand which reports matter to you and then able to pass that data is something that a conversational based AI model can really provide you with like a foot in the door there. And so, yeah, the way that it can pass it out, where it not only tells you the response, but it also gives you the clicks out where you can see how it came to that conclusion, is like a really important thing, because AI is great, but you shouldn't rely on it on your complete strategy. You should look at it as a baseline and then come back and follow through.
I'm going to just add to what Max said, because the way that we use Sidekick right now is kind of like a junior data analyst. The Shopify admin, every time they add more features, personally, I think it's a little difficult to navigate from a UX point of view. And so as a merchant, I think it's going to be really important to pinpoint what specific sales numbers, conversion rates that you're trying to find before you make a merchandising decision, before you decide on what to do next. And so from our perspective as a design partner, when we're working with brands, it's helpful to get a baseline understanding of, okay, give me all the metrics on like the most popular product that's been sold over the last year. Give me the overall conversion rate. Give me everything that I need to know so I can establish a baseline before we start having the conversation with the client about, here's how we can improve conversion. Here's how we can impact the UX. So I find it to be super helpful to just kind of give me a quick snapshot of everything instead of spending hours looking for it.
Mm-hmm. And then adding to that, kind of the small business perspective would be that it is like having a team behind you. So when you're an entrepreneur and you haven't hired a huge team yet, having Sidekick there, it's fully versed on your site. It knows everything about it, and it also knows everything about Shopify and optimization. So you can just sit there when you're feeling stuck and ask it anything. Also, the interface is really easy to use. If you've ever used ChatGPT, it's similar to that. So it's very easy to get started with, and you can just speak very conversationally to it. Like, hey, can you help me with this? And it'll give you an answer. And then just further to that, it's just the fact that it's available 24/7, I think is really valuable. You don't always have control over your day. Sometimes you don't have time to get in there and optimize your shop till it's 11 p.m. and everything else you've had to do is done with. And so having like this big, robust kind of, it's almost like a team member right there, ready to answer your questions anytime, 24/7, it's incredible.
Now, was there ever a use case when you maybe first used Sidekick where you had that aha moment when you realized, okay, this is actually something that can help grow my business, grow myself in general as a merchant? Is there any maybe story? It could be good, it could be bad, perhaps. Let's keep it good for the merchants. But anything that comes to mind when it comes to like, oh my God, Sidekick can do this?
Okay, so like 2 days ago, I was onboarding onto a small brand. So I don't run a brand myself, but I do help brands be able to navigate Shopify from the technical side, but there's an element of strategy there. And I noticed that like the data integrity in that platform, like the user platform, is kind of bad. Like didn't really taxonomize their products. The product descriptions were like very need to know. Like I'm talking like 10 words, like not good. And so I don't want to write their product descriptions for them. That's not really what I want to do. But I think there's an opportunity to kind of guide this small brand in being able to improve and perfect the data integrity. Because I think in a kind of AI, LLM-based world, that is kind of the baseline. You need to have really good underlying data to export into, growing ways of discovering, your products. And so I started off with like it's got this little thing that says like, write your product description. And honestly, it was okay. It could have been better. But then I pulled out Sidekick and I started to work on identifying and clarifying who the persona was. And so like, who are we selling to? How are we guiding the right vocabulary so that I can write these product descriptions in the right way? And so we worked on for about like 10 minutes on like, some prompt engineering, some guidance. And then I asked the question, can you save this and can we use it in the future? And instead of being like, sorry, no, this is like one thread and once this thread is over, it did something that actually surprised me because you don't see it in embedded AI solutions within technology a lot. It said, yeah, sure, I can save this for you and we can refer to it later. And then it came back the next day and we did, and we kept improving. So this way of like iteratively giving it contextual understanding of who you are, gets you further than the alternative.
Max, I think Sidekick might be sentient.
It may be.
Beautiful. How about yourself? Anything that just, immediately caught your eye as like, holy crap, this is going to be an absolute game changer?
The first time I was playing around with Sidekick, my initial assumption was, okay, it's more declarative. Like it'll answer my questions, kind of like ChatGPT or any, LLM. What I found to be super surprising and useful is there's an action step that it takes after that question. So like an example is, find me expired discount codes that I'm running on my store, because if you're a merchant, like you don't want to do that manually. That takes forever, depending on the size of your store. It'll do that for you. And then you can ask it a follow up, like, do you want me to delete those codes? And I found that to be super, one, I was surprised. I'm like, oh crap, that's really helpful. And then two, I'm thinking about, all right, well, what is the future of Sidekick and how might that, be, a year from now, 2 years from now? And I think it could take multiple step changes on your behalf as a merchant or a brand owner, and you could just go ahead and approve and deny certain functions and actions. And I found it to be super powerful.
Like, we heard about some things that are, a little bit new. And what might be my new? So for those who aren't familiar, Shopify has product releases called Editions. Now, at the recent editions, the summer editions that took place in Toronto, conveniently where I'm based out of, we got improvements on contextualized awareness. Start your Shopify store, start feeding it information about your customers, your products, your values, and it will remember as you make future requests for maybe descriptions, maybe meta-related information. But these are super powerful things, along with things like multilingual, 20 plus new languages immediately available. So if you're looking at me and going, Stephan, I'm Portuguese. Eu falo português. Epa, eu não sabe nada about isto agora. I'm just trying to say, I can now go into Sidekick, whether I'm from Brazil, whether I'm from Portugal, and immediately start taking advantage of it. And there's so much. And one thing, you mentioned really quickly was the agentic aspect of it. When people look at Sidekick, they look at a tool that maybe just gives them steps. This is how you accomplish this. But no, things are changing. It does things for you, as may have mentioned. Now, going down the action steps for Sidekick, if it can create products for you, it can create blog pages, shipping, discounts. Is there something maybe down the road that you would love Shopify on the agentic side to be able to do that it might not be able to do today? It's a hell of a question.
Okay, so as part of preparing for this, I talked to my team, and we've got up and down the brand size. We've got smaller brands. We've got brands doing like 300 million plus on Shopify, and we're really like pulling back the layers of paint on Sidekick, seeing where it does well and where it doesn't. And so we get into some really complex data structures. Shopify has this thing called meta objects and meta fields, where you can really like push the landscape of how you can structure custom content and then pull that into your front end store. And so this is an area where there's a good baseline, but when you're modeling out custom data, particularly within Shopify, funneling it into different use cases, there's an opportunity for it to be able to guide and educate on how these custom models are going to get used. And so someone else comes onto the brand onboards, instead of having like a big long content education deck, this is how you use these things. Fantastic if it knew that, or you can funnel that in, and then you can be like, hey, Sidekick, how do I use this? What are the constraints here? And then it would just know. So I think that's where it's going to go, and it'll probably get there soon, but that would be something I'd love to see.
I would say autonomy to implement some of the suggestions for you. So right now, the way that it's structured is you'll ask Sidekick something, and I love his responses. It's really thorough, and it gives you, 5 subheadings of ways to go about what you're asking it with a bunch of bullets below. And you can go through and pick and choose, but you are still the one that's implementing the edits. And they're smart. Like, it is saving me loads of time and giving me access. It's like having a developer on my shoulder. But I think it'd be incredible. I could see that in the future, maybe it's 10 years down the road, but it suggests all these things and it might say, can I implement that for you? And I think the reason why it's not yet is that people are a little bit afraid of that, right? We're still at that like man versus AI conversation. And everyone's a little bit freaked out. But I think as long as we have the power to say, no, don't do it, or yes, go ahead, why not?
As I was playing around with Sidekick more, one thing I started noticing is this is cool. How can this be better and more useful for merchants? Like, not just 6 months from now, but years from now. And if you look at the trajectory of a lot of the other major players in the LLM space, like Claude and OpenAI, et cetera, one thing that they started doing really well is incorporating third-party apps into their workflow. So everything flows through ChatGPT. And so I would imagine a very near future for merchants to basically run their entire store through Shopify as the main OS, and then have Sidekick as like the tooling to help that owner kind of make those decisions. So imagine a scenario where like, okay, you connect Sidekick with Klaviyo for email marketing. Great. Ask Sidekick to produce an email campaign to run this market, like this product that you want to promote with a unique discount code. Use my brand guidelines, compose an email for me. I'll approve the copy, or help produce the copy for me. I'll approve it and then send it connected with Klaviyo. So it's just like a small example, but I would imagine a scenario where like Sidekick is connected with every major app that partners with Shopify. That's what I think is going to really have that network effect and make it super sticky as a valuable tool. The other thing I would say is like, I think right now there's an education component that's missing with Sidekick, which is one, at least with clients that I work with, like not a lot of merchants know about it. And so making it more prominent where it could be useful in like different parts of the admin and not just like have it rest in one area. And then potentially having like a daily snapshot of, hey, here's how your store is performing. Here's the most popular product that's been sold in the last quarter. Just so I get like a snapshot view of how my store is performing. I think that would be super valuable for merchants.
Well, luckily, we have some great product managers here from Shopify learning along with us as well. So I'm sure they love that feedback there. But, we spoke a little bit about, the future of commerce. And when I was looking at, some of the designers of Booking.com, they put out a picture of what Booking.com will look like as a redesign. And all it was the Booking.com existing header, the existing footer, and just a bunch of numbers in between. And their thought process behind this is the future is bots purchasing on our behalf. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the future of commerce purchasing decisions being made by people, but being executed by bots? Should people be scared of that? Did you see that being a reality in the near future? It's something that's people are talking about. So we'd love to hear your perspective on that.
So maybe take a step back before taking a step forward. Some patterns that we're seeing across our clients. I'm going to start off with discovery because I think discovery in AI comes before the actual action of the transaction. Is since the start of the year to where we're at now, we've seen anywhere between 300 to 500% growth in discovery through AI-based discovery models. But we're still at a point where it's overall, pretty much as a rule, about 0.5% of total traffic. So we're early days. But we're seeing patterns of behavior that are changing. And so I think first and foremost, as a brand or a business owner, really not being afraid to ask the question of how SEO, how GEO is evolving over time and how you can make your underlying uniqueness of your products and your products in general, like be able to be AI friendly. And I think that's going to come first. I think that there is going to be some interface transactions that are going to happen through these models directly. But, even polling the wider ecosystem, who knows what's going to happen. It's going to happen, there's going to be things that are going to get in the way of it. It's going to silo of data, protected partnerships, does Shopify interact directly with ChatGPT? What is the role of brand awareness within these models? Is there a dilution of brand identity because you have less understanding of that interface or less control of that interface? What's the role of the presentational layer of your website, what your .com? Is this an extension of how we've been interacting with cross-channel buying and social? And I think the answer is probably somewhat. But as anyone guiding a strategy around your web and interfaces, thinking about the interplay of cross-channel interfaces of how people acquire and understand who you are and how they buy is going to be essential. And so that's going to obviously start with a really strong data set across multiple channels. Do I think that front-end engineering, as we know it, is going to go through an evolution? Yes. Do I think it's going to completely die? I don't think so.
It's really interesting because we're talking about mindset shifts. At the end of the day, we have one of the most important tools that we can leverage immediately right now being Sidekick. But do you see the future of day-to-day operations being less adding a product manually, instead just going specifically on Sidekick? Do you see the future of Shopify's, internal operations as a merchant being strictly prompt-based through Sidekick? Today, people are using it, but is that something we see as a long-term effect?
So I have a bit of a hot take here. I think if Shopify really invests in the usefulness of Sidekick as the product matures, I think it'll be incredibly invaluable to the day-to-day operations and how to run a store for a merchant or a business owner. And so I see in the near future a scenario where there's going to be an entire cohort of 100 million plus brands operated and owned by a very small team. Because when you think about running an e-commerce store, it's a lot of operations behind the scenes, cash flow management, inventory management, marketing, ads management. And so if Sidekick continues to mature and has its hands in all of those aspects of the business run through the Shopify OS, then yeah, you can essentially prompt it to manage most of the core business, where you remove a lot of the brain power to focus on making important business decisions that really impact your business. So yeah, I think if Shopify continues to build on this and Sidekick matures, you can run a super lean team.
No, that thing. And Sarah, you and I had a chance to briefly chat before this amazing event. And, you were telling me a really interesting story about how Sidekick actually got you to where you are today at this very moment. Do you mind sharing some of that with the crowd? I found that story really unique.
Absolutely. So I went through a rebrand 2 weeks ago. It's really fresh. And being, the main web developer at my company, I was trying to manually scrub the entire site from my old brand name, and I suddenly realized I could ask Sidekick, "Hey, can you tell me all the pages where it's showing up?" And it didn't just do that. It also gave me like 10 ways on how to fix it and narrowed in on like, here's the most efficient way to do it, go forward. And then I just kept playing with it, and I started to ask it more and more questions about the analytics. And I wanted to know, what do you think about my top performing products? And it got a little mean. And this is the one that's kind of funny. So it was like, yeah, so this product, a lot of people are visiting it, but your conversion rate's really low. So like you're not going to be in business with that one. It was really funny. You got a little sassy with me, but I loved it because I was like, okay, what am I going to do about this? And then it gave me like 20 incredible ideas on how to optimize my site. And then I just sat there implementing all of them one by one. I'm not through the list. I have a Word doc saved on the side where I'm like, all right, future nights at midnight, I'll get to you. But some of it's simple and some of it's not. Some of it I would never have come up with on my own. So it really is like having a marketing team on your shoulder.
No, it's effective. And, one of my really favorite things about the future of Sidekick is we're talking about typing about chat prompts. Type, this is what I need. Type, this is what I would like to know. But please keep in mind that the future of Sidekick is all about having a conversation. If you go on the mobile app, one of the amazing announcements at post summer 25 editions is just being able to have a conversation similar to, if you download a ChatGPT, go on the voice setting. Hey, I'm looking to do this. How can you help me? And of having a person immediately say, hey, why don't you navigate maybe to your settings on the bottom right corner and continue your actions? That's what the future looks like. And that's what we're extremely excited about. But as we can become more efficient as merchants, as partners, as people operating our Shopify environments, do you think there's a point where we're becoming so efficient where we're actually losing touch in terms of what our values are as a brand that we're bringing to market? Is there maybe a point we get to there? This is a really exciting time, but also a very risky time for the future longevity of our brand and our true values. Do you guys have any thoughts around that out of curiosity?
Yeah. So the idea of originality or authenticity within AI models is fundamentally different to the human touch. You can provide it with context and it'll probably provide, it'll gain its own context through your reporting and your analytics over time, but don't underestimate the human element of using these tools. For example, we've mentioned cross-channel, we've mentioned things that are outside of the Shopify ecosystem. Like those things are really important. And some of those things are pretty intangible. For example, measuring what your viral moments are, how do you pass that out into actionable activities for you? So there is an element where right now it's like we guide as in it's a good starting point. It's like, writer's block should never exist ever again. But at the same time, it's a conversation by design. It's not a one thing, and then you get it back and you post it, and sweet. It's like, even watching like people who are like, using this on a day-to-day basis. Like you get a blog post, and you post in the blog post, but it's 70% of the way there. You still need to like guide it through, to get it to the end. And so, this is very much a partnership where it's weird to say that we have a partnership with technology, but ultimately this is just a highly valuable tool. And we've been using tools for a long time. And we're just changing the way that we bring authenticity and originality into the use of this tool. It'll get better over time, but at the same time, like I would be very hesitant to say like use a strategic guide or take a piece of copy at face value without reviewing it and making sure that it's you believe in what it's doing, because at the end of the day, again, tool, you yourself as the operator are accountable for the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And just adding to exactly what you said about authenticity, I think that is the key of what AI can't really give us when we're trying to lean on it. It's helpful. It's going to get us 70% of the way, but not going to take us 100. And if we let it take us 100, we will lose some of that core brand essence. A great example is I was using Sidekick to write a product description, and it actually did an amazing job because it could scan your entire page. It knew what the product was. It knew what the materials were. It gave me a paragraph. It was functional, but it didn't have that authentic brand tone that I think brands need to maintain and protect in order to retain connection with the brand and bring in new clients, but also keep their old clients happy and just maintain that trust. So I think it's like my favorite phrase about AI in general is that AI isn't going to take your job, but somebody using it will, right? Like that's it. I didn't make that up.
Of Netflix that might have come up with that, but nonetheless, it's a very valid point. Oh, 100%. You mentioned something really interesting. The future of businesses are very lean teams that don't need massive folks in order to, handle day-to-days. My question is like, maybe to the whole panel, what type of skill sets do you think are so incredibly important nowadays? My background is I came as a front-end developer, and now I got my 8-year-old cousin saying he can vibe code me out of business. But it's true, little sassy kid. But us as entrepreneurs, we wear so many hats, and it's not because we want to, it's because we have to, and we want to get to that end goal, whatever that might be. But regardless, maybe you might be a new grad starting your Shopify store, starting to dive into Sidekick. Is there a type of skill set, maybe it could be one, it could be many, that you find is even more important now more than ever?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do I relate this to me? Look, I'm a designer first, but I would consider myself a generalist. Like, I think anyone to be successful, at least in e-commerce, is you need to be curious and willing to learn about the ecosystem and the industry, and just like always, have your ear to the market. But when you look at these new tools like Sidekick, ChatGPT, Claude, etc., it's removing any sort of technology requirement being a barrier for entry, right? So like if you want to build an e-commerce website on Shopify, you don't have an excuse anymore. You can purchase a theme, or you can ask Sidekick to customize it for you and launch your brand over the weekend. If you're unsure about a market, for example, use OpenAI's deep research feature and learn about that market in the next couple of hours. So like there really is no excuse right now because technology is being democratized to zero. And that's where I think Sidekick is really powerful, is it's giving that tool set and empowering merchants to run their operations and their team. As far as skill set is concerned, like honestly, just as long as you're driven and you're curious and you're willing to learn, because technology changes so quickly now, especially with the AI space, I think you'll be successful.
The answer at the end of the day is the best skill set is being an entrepreneur to a degree. But I'm curious, any general thoughts outside of that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think my take on that, and like, I think that was really well said. So nice. It was like the creative element in any role is like super important. So if you're a technologist or you like to code, like what does it mean to be creative in your role? What does it mean to apply that to the way that you use technology is going to be the make or break. And that's something that I'm training my team too. Is like, don't be afraid to use the tools, because that's like the baseline now. There is still some overall, like some sentiment, some cautiousness. Am I bad at my job if I use AI? How do I use AI? Like consciously, is it secure? Like these are all good questions to ask. But at the end of the day, if you're not kind of diving in at this inflection point, you're going to be left behind. And so first and foremost, like use it. And then next is see how you can push the boundary, think abstractly as you kind of consume those, the outcome and the tools that you're using as well. So there's an element of creativity that now is totally intertwined into any professional vocation, I think. And there's a way that you apply that.
I love that. And, generally speaking, we have some great merchants here. We said about 50-50 split. I want to make sure that our merchants can get as much value as possible. And I want to make sure to give you guys the opportunity to let them know one thing in particular, maybe Sidekick AI related, that they should be maybe taking advantage of, being mindful of. At the end of the day, have a conversation in between yourselves to see what you guys are using, but would love to hear your guys' perspective if there's that one thing that a merchant needs to know before they wrap up today's event. I'll give you a start. How about that? There's a gentleman by the name of Kurt Elsler who runs a Shopify agency in Chicago. And one thing he recently mentioned is when you have a Shopify site, you have like a robot txt file that's predominantly focused on educating the search engines on what to index throughout your site. But there's a new file that came out not too long ago, llm.txt. Now, I don't know, it's still early days. We don't know how effective it could be, but it's all about that mindset. It's all about that creativity. It's all about pushing the things that you guys have said to try to best put yourself in the best foot forward. So based off of that, is there anything, maybe a page they should whip up, maybe even a checkout page that no one ever enters that's hurting your conversion rate? Curious if anything that comes up.
I think like the LLM.txt thing is interesting. I'm just going to riff off that for a second because there's also this thing within the Shopify ecosystem that's like extremely new. It came out 2 months ago, but it's called like the global product catalog API. And it's pretty underdocumented, but it's a really powerful way that Shopify is funneling your product data in generative AI models progressively over time, one partnership at a time. But it means that probably like traditional SEO is like scraping pages. It's and there's a lot that you do on the front end to be able to funnel that data in the right way and have ownership over it. But I think there's also going to be a pivot here where not only are you going to have to probably provide some rigor and structure in the right way on your SEO strategy, but you're also going to have to go one level deeper into the core e-commerce platform and think about it as a programmatic API and like how you are consuming, writing your data outside of that presentational layer so that it can funnel in and ultimately inform discovery. So I think like if maybe there's one thing, it's like review the way that you are thinking about your products to, you know, what would your site looks like if you took away the visual design and just got it into those data primitives? And are you ready for kind of more of that AI-based discovery world if you take that perspective?
No, I hear these rumors, and they're all rumors at the end of the day, but you guys actually spoke about it. Cleaning up your data in terms of your Shopify store today, immediately leaving after, make sure, things are as clean as possible. If you're using your meta fields to architect information, make sure there's consistency, with your description in terms of what you're trying to communicate, in terms of the unique, ICP related to your product. These are all things that are very, very fundamental, especially as Sidekick starts to grow. The better you organize and clean your data, the better the responses are going to be for you guys moving forward. So make sure to clean that data. But
I was just going to say quite simply, just dive in and try it, especially if you haven't. So if you have a Shopify shop and you haven't used it yet, the cute little icon that looks like a superhero dude, he's your sidekick. Click on it and ask it anything, and it will just take you from there. I think one of my favorite things that I've uncovered from just using it personally on a kind of a smaller scale is just that it gets you unstuck. And it can be hard when you're an entrepreneur. You're by yourself. You're talking about how lonely it can be. It can be. But this little sidekick guy, I like having him there. He has unstuck me so many times. Like very simple use cases. I could not remember how to update something that I should have remembered. When you go back through and you try something and you realize you've repeated the steps twice and you still haven't figured it out. And I was about to go and Google what it was so I could unstuck myself. And then I was like, oh no, I'm going to use Sidekick. Boom, right there. And then what I like is that the steps stay open in the panel for you. I know this is basic, but I think it's important if you're like a small shop owner and you're building it yourself, but it stays right there. And then you just follow through the steps and you're unstuck. And it really is that simple. But I think getting in and just trying it and testing it and playing with it. And to your point earlier about being creative, allow your own creative brain to guide you and work with it.
Yeah, adding to what Sarah said, I think the best tutorial is just get in there and try it out. One thing I did early on was ask Sidekick, teach me every function that you perform. And it just gave me like this massive list of stuff that it can do. And then I would ask a follow-up prompt, like, all right, like show me how you do that. And it just gave me a good understanding baseline of, all right, this is all the cool stuff that it can do across marketing, across reporting, across this and that. So I think that's a good approach to take, especially if you're someone like me who likes to see the big picture first. The other thing I would say is like, if you're an operator, if you're a brand owner, marketer, et cetera, like just map out your day-to-day function. Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? And then once you play with Sidekick enough, you can start making the links of, oh, cool, I can have Sidekick do this for me. That'll free up 4 hours of my time. And I think that's a good way to kind of look at where Sidekick can plug into your day-to-day operations.
One more thing. Shopify platform, as with any platform, is like moving really fast. And so you mentioned this thing called Editions, which happens every 6 months. And it's pretty much like 100 different product launches aggregated into one announcement. And it's like pretty overwhelming in a good way. But what it means is the assumptions that you had, maybe if you talked to that person or you had researched a certain thing, capability, it might be void when you come back to it. And so there's an educational element here is if you're unsure of an answer, if you're like, I don't have high confidence that this thing is possible, it's not possible, it's the right way, like also ask our sidekick, say like, hey, very specifically in Shopify, does draft orders accept discount codes? 6 months ago, that answer would have been no, but that answer today is yes. And so that's easy to kind of like maybe miss that part and then, complicate yourself out of an easy solution.
Incredible points. If I could take anything away as a Shopify marketer, maybe the new tagline is don't churn, try Sidekick. So, we all try to learn as much as we want. And there are points where we get to, that frustration, that level. So incredible pieces of feedback. Now, with that being said, guys, I want to open this up for you guys as well with where we are. We do have a gentleman in the back, and I'll make my way, but maybe I'll start from the front to back. Any questions you have for our amazing panelists? Okay, we'll start with this gentleman and make our way. Oh, did you have a question as well? I'll start.
Great panel, guys. Thank you. So this AI agent, right, for the Shopify, is it going, Sidekick will be the center of it or something else? Everybody wants to build the agent. Nobody wants the agent to interact with them. And Shopify just shut down all the bots just very recently, as you know. So there's a lot. If you look at Shopify's core value revenue model is merchant services, payments, shipping, which is more than 65% of all Shopify revenue. And when the interface disappears, where's the value?
Where the interface disappears?
When the interface disappears.
For the merchant or for Shopify?
Merchant.
Shopify has been multi-channel for a long time. And so I think that we're going to see more and more channels that are going to be spawned off this like central operating system. One of the things that a lot of us that have talked about Shopify over the last 12 months have said to death is this idea of like a unified platform. It's like core to what Shopify is. It's like, we're going to be unified. We're going to be the enabler for all of your channels, whether it be brick and mortar, so like POS and in store, whether it be social, whether it'll be ChatGPT. And I think that enabling a set of primitive e-commerce tools, regardless of what that channel is going to be where the value continues to happen. We might see that the core online channel, your .com, your brand.com, it may progressively become diminished. Who knows? And another channel might come into play, which, let's just say, AI-based transactions. And it'll be up to Shopify or whoever is a forerunner to say, okay, well, brand, here are the embeddable branded interface experiences that you can put within that tool to shine against your competition. We're going to give you those APIs. We're going to be able to provide that for you. So I think that from what I have seen so far, and I have a look at Salesforce or Magento or Adobe, like I truly believe that Shopify is leading this e-commerce AI-based race. And I think that they're probably going to be the ones that are first to market with whatever this new interface tool enablement is actually going to be.
Just the gentleman in the back, just as you.
Thanks, you guys, for a great talk. I am a Shopify partner and run my Shopify agency and work with brands in New York, Paris, London, elsewhere. So my question to Max is, what are some features of Shopify and Sidekick that the biggest brands that you work with uses that the smaller and mid-sized brands haven't even heard of?
Can I think about that? I'll put Sidekick over here. And one of the questions that I was thinking about was, even out of like most recent Shopify releases, what are the areas where larger brands are finding the most value? And I think a lot of it is in the way that is enabling international-based experiences. I don't know if this is coming up if we're selling domestically in the US, but there's been a whole bunch of innovation around doing internationalization at scale while also keeping everything in the same Shopify instance. And that's important actually from Sidekick, because if you're starting to fracture your data for different markets across multiple instances, I don't think we're at a point where like Sidekick and then like, you be like A, B, C, like the more that it's in one instance, the more powerful these tools are. And so, the ability to set up legal entities in Paris, in the UK, and funnel that into the same instance, the way to use Global E, which is a MOR, merchant of record, but still enable that data to funnel through the Shopify platform. These have been the areas where like larger brands have actually waited to launch until these things happen. And they have happened and they have launched, and it's been pretty powerful. Does that answer?
So mainly just unifying stores
Internationalization
into one entity.
Yeah, and there's some other things like sometimes Shopify does like the boring editions and they do these exciting editions, and this is one of the more exciting editions because it's been so AI focused. But I think the last one or the one before that was the boring editions, which is just means that like we've launched all of these large features and then we're kind of like tidying it up by bringing feature fidelity into the platform. So like less sexy things, but for brands, for client agencies, it's like kind of powerful because it means that if you've built on like draft orders, for example, draft orders are a way where you can create a clienteling experience and allow someone to curate a order, but then get to a point where it checks out later. It's kind of like do things now before later. And before 6 months ago, you couldn't put UI extensions or functions. You couldn't curate the checkout experience in the way that you can now. 4 months ago, you couldn't add discount codes into draft orders. I mentioned that. Now you can, and that provides building blocks for more creativity, more flexibility in the future. The other thing is store credit, different ways of owning the return cycle. So, one of the easy things that you do when you roll out a returns engine is you allow people to just continuously refund that money back to the credit card. That's great. I mean, it's fine. But the more that you can keep that transaction and that within the ecosystem, do an exchange, refund a store credit. These are the areas that do allow you to kind of refine that refund story over time. And so the fact that, B2B, has store credit, the fact that like gift card primitives are changing, these are all like kind of boring, but they're also like really valuable for larger merchants who have been waiting for this fidelity.
Just to follow up to that, so like big agencies like you guys, can you tell Shopify, hey, we want this? Or do they just ship out whatever they feel is good?
Wish. So we have a very minor ability to influence the product roadmap because, where any agency is a small, important because it's such an agency and partner-backed ecosystem, but ultimately we can talk to the right product owners, but that does not mean that we can influence what's going to get built. It's much, much bigger decision. So my duty, as a CTO is kind of like to let Shopify know, like, these are the brand stories, these are the limitations. But often what Shopify is going to do is being like, that's interesting. Let's talk about that more. But then also agency, go build the thing, like build the deficit and make money from it and help brands, So part of it is like, not just because it can't do something doesn't mean that it can't be done. It's more about understanding where the limitations are, maybe understand how it might factor into the roadmap in the future, because that will influence how much you invest as a brand or a partner building custom technology, but then go extend the platform, go do it yourself.
For 2 more questions.
So my question is, has AI affected how much the brands you guys work with rely on you? Like they go more towards, cloud, chat GPT, anything like that? Or like, have you noticed any difference?
I would flip that narrative with this, which is brands, yes, partly they hire you to execute, but they're more hiring you for your strategy, like your unique point of view and what kind of value you bring to the engagement. And I think the way that you should apply AI is, how do we be more efficient with our operations? So like agencies are notorious with just being inefficient sometimes because, the creative process takes a while. So if you're incorporating AI into your workflow from an agency point of view, you can be a lot more efficient in delivering value to your client. Now, yeah, we've had conversations where budgets needed to be reconsidered, but like, again, I think as long as you focus on providing value to your client, the tooling doesn't really matter. It just makes your job a lot easier.
And the gentleman here, you know what? Seem like a nice guy. I'll go right after. Okay, 2 more questions. Take that back.
First, thank you for a great discussion. So my name is Jeremy. I'm the CTO of Jesse's on New York, our New York-based lifestyle fashion brand. So my question actually is about the dark side of generative AIs, which is hallucination. So if I use a Sidekick and tell me, oh, this week your sales about 100K, how can I trust this data?
My answer is don't from face value. Like, so I was having a conversation yesterday with a e-commerce consultant and data analyst, I would say, from work with some pretty prominent enterprise grade brands, and his take is like, it's valuable and this is a good tool, but we're also on a journey here, and the journey is not perfection, and hallucinations are a thing. For example, asking what are your, segment your sales by geographical area. He noticed that sales were segmented by billing address rather than shipping address. It may be something that could fly under the radar, still gives you a similar insight, but it's also something that you also want to know that so that you can inform that in ultimately your guidance. One of the things that Sidekick does, which I think is a good architectural decision, is it doesn't just give you the answer. It actually it writes Shopify's version of SQL, and it pulls up the report. And so it gives you a summary, but if you wanted to validate, which I would recommend anybody do, go check it out, see how that culminated. If you have any questions, like what does this part of the query do, just ask Sidekick, and make sure that you understand. And I think that goes with any type of generative AI. Like one of the funniest posts that I saw about vibe coding is like 6 months ago, someone was like, "Oh my God, I started a business. I've built this app. It's amazing. I did it within an afternoon." And then 6 months later, he's like, "Oh my God, why am I getting hacked? All of my data is going. I have no idea. Someone help." But it's like, okay, like it can be really, from a surface level, it can be really impactful. But there is a reason why we understand the way that things are built, and that doesn't go away. And so, I would say like anticipate and probably accept hallucinations. Just protect yourself as the accountable individual, and just go check and validate the report.
Thank you.
So our last question.
Thank you guys for the great panel. My name is Hamoudi. I'm CEO and co-founder of Data Dripper. We help D2C e-commerce brands with competitive intelligence. But my question is more tailored to personalization. So all of you talked about personalizations for like new funnels for the customers, but also personalization for like agents, where like entire websites like booking.com is like text. So my question is specifically like for brands who are like in the bigger scale, who are optimizing for new experiences and funnels, whether it's like a quiz funnel or like a different type of like interactive experience. Where do you see that going? Like while big brands also optimize for non-feeling machines, how are brands now optimizing to grab more attention, like have this sense of community?
We have been fooling around with this topic that says that is one website per human as like a general concept. Personalization on the web has been like this under-delivered and over-promised part of our experience for over a decade. Like it's like we've been talking about how we can like segment out different experiences throughout the funnel, starting from the homepage. Even simple things like understand, the gender that I identify as, and like follow through with recommendations. And ultimately what we've culminated in for the most of the time is personalized upsells, personalized product recommendations, and some semblance in between. The thing is, it's not just a technology problem, it's a content problem. And so one of the big issues with doing personalization at a deep level is that that's a lot of content that you have to generate, and there's a lot of cost associated with that and a lot of time. But that's also where generative AI can come in, and which is going to be a big unlock. So going back to originality and authenticity, one of these areas is content generation to enable personalized experience, and then funneling that into the technology that underpins the web. And I think that we're getting closer there because we're tackling it from both the content and the tech side, and we're going to progressively get there. I think one of the issues that we may run into is the kind of the fractured nature of e-commerce, the way that one brand, one product does one part of the personalized experience, another one does not, and they don't talk to each other because they have siloed data and they protect it. And so something that is maybe an area for agencies, partners, or brands is to understand how segmentation, how the engines work, and make sure that the one representation of your customer is translated across your entire stack, which is a challenge and a journey, but I think important. Oh, I don't really know it that deeply, but does it do it throughout the entire stack? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And there also like Nosto does it as well. There's like different areas that will do it, but at the same time, it's like it comes back. We've seen like less adoption of Nosto from a personalization perspective, and more on like the product recs and kind of some of the multi-channel thing because of the content. Like you may have the technical means to understand that you're part of this customer segment, but you still don't have the time and resources to make every fraction of a campaign to represent those segments. And so that would be an area where I think it's important. And we do see a lot of it on landing pages, but then we also see, a lot of, Shopify experiences that are still codified in Liquid that still need to be performant, and intertwining like a surface layer, hijack of a certain experience also is maybe not the best way to maintain brand integrity as well. So I'd like to see technology solutions be it really like first party rather than always being a bit of a layer on top.
Guys, great questions overall. So as we start to wrap things up, I just want to leave it back to our panels if there's any last things you want to let our audience know here today. But before we do that, there's some really cool little marketing panels. So on the postcard on the back, we've actually put together 25 of the most popular Shopify Sidekick prompts, modern day prompts. So if you guys are interested, feel free to sign up and you guys can take advantage of that. But as I mentioned, before we wrap things up, can we please give an amazing round of applause to this panel?
Word.
I'll let you say some outro words if that's the best way of going about it. But
Just say thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. It's Wednesday. It's a Wednesday evening in New York City. So thanks for coming in to us talk.
He needed to ask Sidekick what day it is. No, thank you all for coming. This is great. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, echoing those notes. Thanks all for coming in, for Stephan for hosting, and Shopify for giving us this awesome space. Try out Sidekick. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
I've always been the one to say the first goodbye. Had to love and lose 100 million times.